champ now. Yes, I didn't say. What are you looking so sad about, champ?
I'm surprised. I mean, I'm really insulted. That's not right, what you just said.
What do you mean, what I just said?
I mean, I'm getting a drink of water. I'm late getting on, but you talk. I said something about the greatest heavyweight champ, man. I'm a hometown man, and you talking about Joe Louis, man. Joe Louis wouldn't be nothing for me. Joe, I tell you, Joe, do you think you would have stood a chance with me?
Well, Clay, one time during my career, I've gone on a Formula One tour.
I would have been a bum compared to you.
What's happening, my people? It's Cat Sports again, back for another afternoon with the family. That's right. You know what time it is. If it's Monday through Friday, 2 p.m., it's the Boxtorian, bringing you all that boxing history. Boxing is the greatest sport of them all. That's why we love it. Can't get enough of it. Miss Cass, Shawa, salute to everyone, and welcome to another episode of Cass Sports, the Boxtorian. Today, a look at Toney versus Tiberi, Curry, Mcclellan, and Nunn. James Toney versus Dave Tiberi, Donald Curry, Gerald Mcclellan, and Michael Nunn. Has the family today. Salute, Shawa. Good to see you again. We are going to take a look at some boxing from around like the late 80s going into the 90s. James Toney and Dave Tiberi fight was a very controversial fight. Many people thought it was a robbery. Tiberi was a 10-1 underdog coming in. A lot of people thought he wasn't to fight. It was so bad that it sparked a United States congressional investigation into boxing. That's how bad that one was. And then Donald Curry, he was thought to be the next big thing in the 80s. A lot of people thought he didn't reach his potential. After Sugar Ray Leonard he was thought to be the next face of boxing back in the 80s, you know, as far as the lower weight classes, because Mike Tyson was on fire around that time. But as far as welterweight down in that area, Donald Curry was thought to be the next big thing after Sugar Ray Leonard. But we're going to look at his career today and see what happened, why he didn't reach his full potential. And Gerald McClellan, he had brain damage, suffered in a fight, lost his vision, 80% of his hearing. We're going to look at exactly what happened to him today. And Michael Nunn, finally Michael Nunn, after his career, he wanted to play around in the drug world, sold some cocaine to an undercover federal agent that spent 15 years of his life in prison. He's out now. I think he got out about 2019, but yeah, he spent 15 years of his life in prison for that. And the man made a lot of money boxing, so I wonder what happened. Why he had to go into the drug world, but he paid for it. Yeah, I thought so too, Shava. Yeah, that Tiberi won. We're going to talk about it. It was terrible, that fight. But all that today on Cast Sports The Box Story, bringing you all that boxing history. But first, we got to get our fight of the day in, right? Got to get that in. And since we're going to talk about a fight a little ways after that time frame, when all these fighters competed, but right around that time, but a little ways after that today. So let's get into our fight of the day. And we're early in this week of boxing history, and also early in the week of the big Canelo Bud showdown, and also Monster Inoue too. So wow, big weekend of fighting coming up. Big weekend. So we're working our way towards Bud and Canelo. But let's get into the fight of the day today. Okay, the fight of the day today is the Golden Boy, Oscar De La Hoya versus Sugar Shane Mosley, June 17th, 2000. A huge breakout win for Sugar Shane. De La Hoya versus Mosley, June 17th, 2000. Let's get into it. Now, it was the summer of 2000. Year 2000. Still drunk on the optimism of the new millennium, the world seemed a happier, less volatile place. Now, the social media giants dominating our lives now did not even exist back then at that time. The tragedy of 9/11 and the war on terror had yet to unfold. And a Donald Trump presidency was still just a joke on the Simpsons cartoon. Remember? Yeah. The boxing landscape was also very different a few decades ago. Lennox Lewis reigned as the undisputed heavyweight king. We had an ambitious young champion who some called Pretty Boy, defending the first of many world titles. And the spectacular Roy Jones Jr., widely regarded as the finest boxer on the planet, feasted on a roster of underwhelming challengers. Meanwhile, Latino superstar Oscar De La Hoya, aka the Golden Boy, was in fact the biggest star in the sport outside of anyone named Mike Tyson. That's Oscar defeating the legendary Julio Cesar Chavez, not once, but twice. Yep. Yeah, that's that picture right. He beat Chavez twice. So, Oscar's impressive run in the late 90s took him to the cusp of greatness, as he won belts from super featherweight all the way to welterweight, defeating the likes of Julio Cesar Chavez, Pernell Whitaker, and Ike Bazooka Cortez along the way. But in a September 1999 mega fight, Felix Trinidad stole a razor-thin decision from under Oscar's nose, and the Golden Boy's march to immortality was stopped in its tracks. To make matters even worse, De La Hoya was widely ridiculed for running in the late rounds of that fight. The charge questioning his manhood, his Mexican heritage, his whole identity as a fighter. A comeback knockout of Daryl Coley showed he still had a fire burning, but a more meaningful opponent was needed to erase the stigma of the Trinidad defeat. Enter Sugar Shane Mosley into the equation. Enter Sugar Shane. A childhood amateur rival of Oscar, Mosley's failure to make it to the 1992 Olympics had hampered his ascent through the pro ranks. But his exceptional talent saw him showered with the kind of plaudits considered sacrilegious by boxing purists. Asked what happened him so much about Mosley, HBO's Larry Merchant had replied, 3 words: Sugar Ray Robinson. Roy Jones Jr. called Mosley the best lightweight he's seen outside of Roberto Duran, while veteran trainer and analyst Gil Clancy was so impressed, he described the experience of watching Mosley as like looking at a fighter back in the 40s. So Sugar Shane was getting high praise. Yes, he was. Yes, he was. The dazzling speed, brutal body attack, and keen finishing instincts of the fighter they called Sugar Shane blended beautifully into what his father Jack called their power boxing style. And it led to 8 consecutive title wins, all by knockout. But being unable to secure a truly big fight motivated Shane to leap over the super lightweights and assault the welterweight division, right? He went from 135 to 147, trying to get that big fight. 2 more knockouts followed at welterweight, right? And with his credentials at 147 pounds established, the big name showdown he craved finally beckoned, that being De La Hoya versus Mosley at the Staples Center in Los Angeles, California on HBO pay-per-view. Well, Sugar Shane got his big name, and they got the biggest name in the sport at that time, Oscar. Mm-hmm. Yes, he did. And that's him and Jesse James Leger right there, 1998. Another big name back around that time. Yeah, Jesse James Leger. So Shane was a slight underdog for the big showdown with Oscars, because Oscar had presumed advantages in size and power, a common pre-fight theme. But a close look at their histories revealed Mosley had boxed at 139 pounds in the amateurs, whereas Oscar won his Olympic medal at 132, with both starting off as pros at lightweight, 135. Now, true, Oscar was 2 inches taller and had 8 more fights at welterweight, but it was actually Mosley who entered the ring that night heavier, coming in at 155 pounds to Oscar's 152. You know, after they rehydrated and everything, after coming in under the 147-pound limit, Mosley came in at 155 on fight night, Oscar at 152. So Shane was actually the bigger man, right? The ring is my home. I can do whatever I want, Shane told Boxing Monthly in the lead up to the legit best versus best pay-per-view showdown. And sure enough, as he made his way to the ring, smiling and bouncing and surrounded by his family, Shane looked a picture of absolute confidence. Now Oscar, as was his way prior to a big fight, seemed focused, but more tense before entering the arena, accompanied by a Mexican mariachi band. All pre-fight speculations aside, what remained was what made Oscar vs. Mosley a must-watch proposition for boxing fans. This was a clash between two of the very best in the sport, pound for pound. Yes, it was. At that time, because Shane and the Golden Boy was two of the best in the sport. Bar none. Pound for pound. There it is. Destiny. That's what they called it. Destiny. Round one. So Sugar Shane boxing beautifully. Starting strong and meeting Oscar head on with a series of hard right hands around the guard. Looking looser and quicker of hand and foot, Sugar Shane rifled a sharp jab and outlanded the Golden Boy, sweeping around on all three scorecards and prompting trainer Robert Alcazar to implore Oscar to use your jab and be first. Oscar responded, landing clean jabs and several left hooks to the body in round two. But Sugar Shane was more versatile over the next few rounds, edging backwards to time Oscar with his quicker single shots, while Oscar stalked purposefully, letting rip with two fisted combinations whenever in range. Now, midway through the fifth round, Sugar Shane picked out a peach of a right uppercut, timing the shot to perfection under an Oscar jab that was a fraction of a second too slow. A snapshot of the ridiculous skill levels on display. To his credit, Oscar came firing right back and swept the fifth round and sixth rounds on all three scorecards with effective aggression. Effective aggression. The first 6 rounds of De La Hoya vs. Mosley had been tactical, but fiercely contested. And at the midway point, the momentum appeared to be with Oscar, a fact reflected in the official tallies. One card was even, while the other two had the Golden Boy leading by 4 and 2 points, respectively. The tide is going toward De La Hoya, noted HBO's Merchant. No question, agreed Jim Lantley. Trainer Jack Mosley, sensing the need to regain the initiative, encouraged his son to just relax, use your rhythm. And Sugar Shane came out sharp in the 7th round to begin the second half of the fight, rolling his upper body more and timing Oscar with leaping left hook counters and hard overhand rights. Both fighters raised a fist as they walked back to their corners after another close round. But the message from Mosley was clear. I'm not going anywhere, Oscar. I'm not going anywhere. Okay? So we get into the second half of the fight now. Garber says, yes, Mosley was wider, thicker across the chest and shoulders. Yes, he was. Yep. And that gave that gave him those 3 pounds of advantage over Oscar coming in too. Right, Shaw, a good point. Okay, getting into the second half of the fight, they got Oscar a little bit ahead. Now, Oscar marched forward in the 8th round and landed some stiff jabs, but Sugar Shane looked the more fluid and comfortable fighter now as he bounced on his toes and circled away, even turning southpaw for the last minute of the 8th round. Furious exchanges in a pivotal 9th round had the crowd on his feet, with Sugar Shane seeming energized. Oscar tried to fight fire with fire, but he was missing more and more, losing the exchanges and taking sharp shots. And in round 10, the tide officially turned as the speed and superior jab of Sugar Shane dominated, connecting at an impressive 65% rate. He almost doubled Oscar's totals, outlanding him by 34 to 19 in the 10th round as the momentum clearly swung to Sugar Shane, with the contest still up for grabs on the judges' cards. Another close round in the 11th saw Sugar Shane more than hold his own, and Alcazar told De La Hoya straight, Oscar's trainer. Alcazar told him straight up, "We need this round." You know, the last round, Oscar's trainer told him, "We need this round." After all, Oscar had clinched victory before in the final round of a super fight, knocking down Ike Corte and coming within a whisker of scoring a stoppage. But on this night, Sugar Shane was to prove he had more staying power than Bazooka did. Okay, yeah, this wasn't Bazooka Lamone this time. This was Sugar Shane Mosley. 12th round. Now, at the bell, with the crowd roaring, both champions came out blazing, ripping fierce salvos to both head and body. But the sharper, eye-catching shots were coming from Sugar Shane. When they clinched for a brief respite, Oscar shook his head to show he was fine, but the punches told a different story. Halfway through the final round, Sugar Shane thudded home a vicious right hook to the body. Hurt, Oscar instinctively fired back and got hit flush on the jaw with a huge counter right hand that stiffened his legs. Sugar Shane is out-hustling Oscar, outworking him, out-fighting him when it matters most, declared Jim Lampley, one of the commentators. Mosley took the round big, landing a massive 45 punches to Oscar's 18 as they traded furiously right to the final bell. Yep. Sugar Shane took the final round huge. Closed it out strong. Yep. Now, De La Hoya versus Mosley was highly competitive and had more than lived up to the hype. But the final outcome was, if not obvious, clear to most. However, the judges turned in cards of 116-112 and 115-113 for Sugar Shane and 115-113 for Oscar, meaning Oscar was only one round away from securing a draw. The total punch stats were also tight, with Sugar Shane landing 284 to Oscar's 257. Yeah, that was real tight. That like 27 point punch difference over 12 rounds. And significantly, this time, Oscar ran from Mosley's onslaught. The bad memory of the Trinidad fight is totally erased, declared Lampley. This has been a war. But despite Oscar's gutsy effort, it was Shane's second half surge that made him a deserved winner in a thrilling 12-round Donnybrook. Sugar Shane threw and landed more punches in every single round from the 8th to the 12th. Swept the last 6 rounds on one of the judges' scorecards while losing only one, the 11th on another, and connected with a huge 57% of his total power punches compared to 37% for Oscar. That's incredible. 57% of his power punches. Wow. You normally win when you land 57% of your power punches. Wow. Yeah, they did have a rematch in 2003. Was another close win for Sugar Shane. He beat Oscar twice. Bear with me for a minute. Yeah, there we go. I lost track of where I was at on the pictures. There we go. Yeah, they had a rematch in 2003. Another good close fight won by Sugar Shane Mosley. Yep. The rematch. Okay, so let's finish this off. Yeah, that was a very, very good fight there. Oscar and Sugar Shane, both of them really was great fights. Yep. There we go. I had got off my display there. I gotta get back down to where I was at. Wow. Right at the end. Before everything started messing up on me. But yeah, let's finish this off. Yeah, Sugar Shane got the win, and he also got the win in the rematch. Yeah, in the 12th round, they both stood toe to toe and both went soul searching to see who was the real champion, said Mosley. I had to show the world that I was prepared to fight, and I'm a true warrior. Now, Oscar De La Hoya versus Mosley had been billed as destiny. And on this night, amid the glitz and glamour of the Los Angeles Staples Center, Shane Mosley fulfilled the potential many had predicted he was destined to achieve. While in defeat, Oscar earned the Warrior's respect he craved. But it was Sugar Shane who emerged as the new star, briefly gaining recognition after a magnificent performance as the premier boxer in the world, pound for pound. And though his career would not live up to the lofty heights of his namesakes, Sugar Ray Robinson and Sugar Ray Leonard, on this night, he did the Sugar moniker proud. Yes, he did. Did it proud that night, Sugar Shane did. Yeah. And there's your winner of the fight of the day, Sugar Shane Mosley. What's up, Jarrell Hattie and Kensaw Love What? Salute. Okay, yeah, today we're going to be talking about some fighters put like 80s into the 90s. We're going to start out with the James Toney and Dave Tiberi fight. This was they called it a big, huge robbery, and it sparked a United States congressional investigation into boxing, this fight did. Yeah. Because two of the judges, the fight was in Atlantic City, New Jersey, and two of the judges weren't even licensed to judge fights in New Jersey. But I guess they went out and found some judges that was willing to do what they wanted them to do, even though they didn't have licenses to judge fights in New Jersey, right? But yeah, let's talk about this one. Sugar Shane. We finished with Sugar Shane. They lights out James Toney and Dave Tiberi, right? Yeah, we in fight week for the big Bud Canelo showdown, and we can't forget Monster at MJ. Yeah, because they said Monster at MJ starts up right after Canelo and Bud. So everybody better get their naps in Saturday morning, Saturday during the day. I'm old. I'm gonna get a couple naps in. I might not get up till 8 o'clock Saturday night. I'm not gonna, because usually by the time Monster come on, I'll be cutting Z's, but I'm gonna be woke this time. That's going to be a huge weekend of boxing. But the James Toney versus Dave Tiberi fight and what it wrought. Okay, yeah, there they go right there. Of course, lights out on the left, Tiberi on the right. And Tiberi was a little known fight, came in as a 10-1 underdog in this fight against James Toney, right? 10-1. That's what the odds makers, the chances they gave him. 10-1. And yeah, boxing is a dirty sport, but we love it. But let's talk about this fight. Yeah, ain't that something, Shaw? No wonder. Yup. Yeah, they had this one planned. The conspiracy was against Tiberi was fighting the losing battle from the beginning. But yeah, James Toney versus Dave Tiberi. Now, Dave Tiberi has never seen Rob Roy, the 1995 movie about the head of an 18th century Scottish clan with Liam Neeson in the title role. But the former world championship contender can identify with a line of dialogue in which Neeson's character chooses to become a hunted outlaw rather than bear false witness against another, a blameless nobleman, thus violating his own code of conduct. Honor, Rob Roy tells his wife, is the gift a man gives himself. Tiberi, who has lived his life by similarly exacting standards, considers the significance of the legendary Highlander's message and is moved by what he considers to be the irrefutable truth contained therein. Wow, Tiberi said, that's pretty profound stuff. February 8th, 1992, marked the date of a boxing match that under relatively normal circumstances would have been interesting, but not particularly out of the ordinary. In an afternoon fight televised nationally by ABC, Tiberi, a 10-1 underdog, fought the fight of his life in losing a hotly disputed split decision to IBF middleweight champion James Lights Out Toney at the Trump Taj Mahal in Atlantic City. And although some ringsiders figured the scoring could have gone either way, the public and those with voices powerful enough to influence the conversation contended that a monumental injustice had been committed. Donald Trump himself, whose casino hosted the event, said the nod for Toney was disgraceful and an embarrassment. And Alice Wallau, the color commentator for the ABC telecast, called it the most disgusting decision I've ever seen. Most disgusting he's ever seen, right? Now, although the outcome, Judge Frank Brunette scored the 12-round fight, 117-111 for Tiberi, while Frank Garza and Bill Leach saw Toney as the winner by respective margins of 115-112, 115-111. And neither of those judges were even licensed to judge a fight in New Jersey. Those were the two. Both of the judges that gave it to Toney shouldn't even have been judging the fight at all, right? Now, the outcome wasn't the main focus of the boxing world at the time, because that was around the time Mike Tyson would be convicted of rape in the Indianapolis courtroom just 2 days later after that fight. So that wasn't the focus of the boxing world. But it made Tiberi something of an overnight sensation and a sympathetic figure. You know, the little guy whose hopes and dreams had been crushed by an entrenched system designed to always reward the bigger name fighter. Except that a financial windfall awaited to salve any wounded feelings that Tiberi had, who earned the career high, but nonetheless modest, $26,000 for the Toney fight, might have had. Top rank honcho, the Bob Father Arum, offered Tiberi an immediate rematch for April 11th with a guarantee of $250,000. Now, this man had made $26,000 for this fight. Now, Bob Arum offered him $250,000 for the next fight. So they're saying, yeah, we cheated you, and we're going to pay you. Next time, they know Toney going to come in ideal shape and just probably smash him. You know, now Lights Up going to come in the next fight and do what he just should have done in the first fight, right? So Bob going to pay him to come in there and get beat up so they can erase the robbery. So Bob offered him $250,000 along with 2% of pay-per-view revenues. Now, most fighters accustomed to taking short money while battling their way up through the club ranks would have jumped at this opportunity, right? would have jumped at it. That's most fighters. But Tiberi was going on principle. So then again, most fighters are not Dave Tiberi. One of 14 children born to a father who stressed the importance of doing the right thing. Okay? What's up, autism? The autism boy is in the building. How are you today, my friend? Yeah, we are just talking about some boxes from the 80s, 90s, around in there. We talking about that big fight between, well, it wasn't a big fight at the time, but it turned into be significant because of what happened, the judging and stuff. But salute, autism boy. Let's continue. Yeah, and then after they robbed him, Bob Arum offered him $250,000, right, to take an immediate rematch, knowing Toney gonna come in at this time in tip-top shape and probably smash him, right? You know, everything solved. We paid him. This is what should have happened in the first fight, blah, 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 it's over. But Tiberi said no, right? He was one of 14 children born to a father who stressed the importance of doing the right thing. Now, Tiberi said he considered himself to be the rightful champion, and that he would only consent to a do-over if he was allowed to enter the ring as the champion, right? If the outcome was not reversed, he announced he would hang up his gloves until justice was served. So he turned down the Bob father's offer. He was 25 years old at the time, married with a young child. And although he had some leverage in contract negotiations, he hardly was in a position to dictate what would have been a historic shift in boxing politics, you know, to let him come in last and just all of a sudden just reverse the decision and give it to him. They wasn't going to do that, okay? They said, we offer you $250,000. Be happy. We gave you an inch, now you want a mile. Right. Okay, Yeshua says Tiberi is a super Christian too. A pastor. Okay. Yeah, but Tiberi said no. He's standing on principle. Now, although the monetary enticements for him to return kept creeping upward, Tiberi said they kept offering him more money. Because originally it was $250,000. Tiberi said the top offer for a second fight eventually climbed to $500,000, $500,000, right? This to a man that made $26,000 on the first fight. Now they're offering $500,000, right? So, that's a big raise there. But, and 3% of the pay-per-view revenues. But Tiberi stuck to his guns, right? A little more than 25 years after that, Tiberi was then 51 years old and at peace with 50 Cent, which eventually led to a United States Senate investigation into professional boxing and the passage of 2 laws to modify and hopefully improve the sport. A book, Tiberi, the Uncrowned Champion, was quickly co-authored by Ed Okonawis and Andy Urkel and rushed into print, unreservedly backing Tiberi's position. Yeah, he stood on principle. That had to be hard though, because for a man that made $26,000 for the first fight, now they offer you $500,000 for the second one. But Dave said no. Now, the only way I'll take it, you got to reverse the decision, and I'll come into the second fight as the champion. But you know they wasn't going to do that. Financially, of course, it affected me in a big way. Tiberi said of his refusal to bend on what he considered to be a matter of principle. I wonder how I would feel 10 or 20 years down the road. Would I regret the decision that I made? I have to say, I have not regretted it, not one bit. I would have regretted it if I had accepted it, right? I knew I would have had a harder time living with myself, knowing that rules had been broken and that I failed to take a stand on what I believed to be right. Because remember, his father taught him growing up to always do the right thing, right? father would have been proud of him. I think his father had passed away by that time. But he would have been proud of his son because he stood on principle. Yeah. What's up, Mike Graham in the building? Salute, Mike. How are you today? Here we're talking about the James Toney, Dave Tiberi situation where, Dave got robbed. He made $26,000. The Godfather going to come off in $250 for a rematch. Went all the way up to $500,000, but Dave said no. Only way I fight Toney again, you got to reverse the decision. I come into the fight as champion, and you knew they wasn't going to do that. So Dave said no. He stood on principle. Okay. Now there are, of course, varying views of Tiberi's Rob Roy-like commitment to his personal sense of honor. Now, some say he had to be crazy to turn his back on a mid-six-figure payday. They would have insured his family because he and his wife, Angela, later had 2 more children. They had 1 at that time, they had 2 more. But that $500,000 payday would have insured his family a measure of financial security. The others wonder what all the fuss was about. In any case, the big brouhaha was and is much ado about nothing. Without a doubt, the fight was closer than it should have been, said Jackie Callan, James Toney's manager. But when you get one guy on the best day of his career and another on the worst day of his career, this is what can happen. James didn't have enough gas in the tank to be the same fighter that beat Michael Nunn and Iran Barkley. He was not near 100%. I don't think it was because he didn't take Tiberi seriously. He looked at everybody as a potential threat. But James always had a problem making weight. This is James Toney's manager talking. She said, but James always had a problem making weight. So some of the tactics he used to get down weakened him. James didn't lose the weight in a healthy manner, and he paid the price for that. Now, Toney collapsed after the final bell and severely dehydrated. He was rushed to a local hospital where he was given IV fluids, right? It was a close fight that maybe went to an unpopular decision. This is still Toney's manager. She said it was a close fight that maybe went to an unpopular decision, but I've seen much, much worse. Why this one sparked so much controversy, I don't know. Maybe it was like the Rocky story with the white kid no one had heard much about going against the big bad black champion. It was one of those instances where an underdog wins by losing simply by putting up such a valiant effort. And 2 judges not licensed to box in the state, Cassie, had a lot to do with it too. It was a lot more than the white kid going up against the black champion. A whole lot more than that. What about the 2 judges that shouldn't even been judging the fight and both gave it to Lights Out, right? Yeah, he did. He looked weak during the fight, Lights Out did. Yeah. But anyway, from a rarely boxing standpoint, Toney Tiberi might never have come off in the first place had not the IBF Rankings Committee acted on a request by top-ranked matchmaker Ron Katz, elevated Tiberi to a number 10 ranking. Without a spot in the top 10, Tiberi, a resident of Newcastle, Delaware, who had previously won the French IBC super middleweight title, but had never fought a world-rated middleweight. If he had been elevated into that top 10, he would not have been eligible to get the title shot, right? So they were setting all that up from at that point, because nobody gave Tiberi a chance. So they put him in the top 10 just so he could fight James Toney, figuring Toney would smash him. But Lights Out for one of the worst fights of his career. He was dehydrated. Like I said, he collapsed after the fight, had to be rushed to the hospital. Now, although his manager, Callan, had said prior to the fight that Toney wasn't overlooking Tiberi, she outlined the timetable for the champ for the remainder of 1992 that suggested otherwise. Yeah, she said he was not looking this guy, but she was talking about 2 or 3 fights down the road before this fight even happened. That sounds like overlooking somebody to me. She said this is before the Tiberi fight even happened in February. She talked about on April 11th, we have a fight on the undercard of the George Foreman, Alex Stewart card in Las Vegas, which will be on HBO. She said, we're looking at possible opponents right now. After that, we're looking at a June 6th rematch with Mike Mcclellan, an August 15th fight on ABC against an opponent to be named. So she's talking about 3 or 4 fights in the future that me fought this guy, but saying we're not overlooking him. Oh, and we want to finish the year with a big TV KO, which was what HBO's pay-per-view arm was then called. And she said this fight was going to be in October or November. So she said they wasn't overlooking this guy, but she talked about 4 fights in the future they looking at. 4 lights out. Isn't it dangerous to speak about future fights before the one at hand is safely in the rearview mirror? She said, James Toney is not the kind of fighter who would give an underdog a chance to get lucky, Callan responded. James, let's face it, is an animal in the ring. He's that way with everybody. In his mind, the person he's fighting is trying to take what he has from him, and James is not about to give it up. For his part, Tiberi, who trained in Philadelphia and sparred regularly with such former or future world champions as Prince Charles Williams, Bernard Hopkins, and Steve Little, believed himself to be up to the task. So did his veteran trainer, Marty Feldman, who thought he detected something in Toney's makeup that made him susceptible to the fight plan he was devising for Tiberi to follow. Marty, Tiberi's trainer, said, I think we can stop Toney in the 5th or 6th round. Now, yeah, Marty, you dreaming now. Now, Tiberi recalled, he said, his trainer told him, you have a rock-solid jaw, and Toney isn't used to being pressured. He doesn't punch backing up. You're going to pressure him, and we're going to shock the world. Yeah, that no knockout, no 5th or 6th round, though. Not lights out. Come on, Marty. Now, the plan nearly blew up in the 1st round when Toney connected with a big left hook to that rock-solid jaw that clearly hurt Tiberi. But Tiberi made it to the end of the round, and following Feldman's instructions, thereafter took the fight right to Toney, despite the seeming disparity in punching power, right? Toney came into this fight 28-0 with 20 knockouts. Tiberi was 22-2 with just 8 knockouts, right? When the final bell sounded, Tiberi thrust his arms into the air in his exultation and was hoisted aloft by his manager, Mark Condriff. And then came the decision that Tiberi still can't quite believe. 17 years later, James Toney admitted that was a fight he did lose. Tiberi said, as a fighter, you know if you won or lost, regardless of what the scorecards say. And I definitely thought I won. Yeah, Lights Out did admit it 17 years later. And they got together, I think it was at one of the Hall of Fame, one year at the Hall of Fame when they were putting the new people in. They both were there and took pictures together and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, Toney and Tiberi did. Yeah, they got together and talked. Nah, James Toney wasn't overrated at all. Not at all. Not in the least. Nah. We're going to get to him at the end. Now, if Tiberi had consented to accepting the big money rematch, that likely would have been that. The fervor would have been dissipated over time. Yeah, that's what Bob Arum wanted. Take the rematch, pay him all that money, and then everything would have been forgotten. Toney probably would have went in and smashed him. It all would have been forgotten. But he said, no, I'm not doing that. Yeah. They said all probably would have dissipated over time. Maybe he would have won the second time around. Nah, no way. Maybe he wouldn't have. A more fit Toney surely again would have been the favorite. But Tiberi said that rules had been broken, and what's the point of even having rules if they're disregarded? The two judges who had to fight for Toney were not even licensed by the state of New Jersey. Their scorecards should have been null and void. It came out during the Senate investigation that the referee, Robert Palmer, was considered by Larry Hazzard, the head of the New Jersey State Athletic Commission, to be green and incompetent. They just put him in there anyway. And he deducted a point from Tiberi in the 6th round for a low blow before giving him a warning. By no means am I a crybaby, but I follow the rules. The rules should be followed, especially for a world championship fight. To my way of thinking, the only scorecard that should have counted was the one submitted by the only licensed judge. He got a point there, which was Brunette. And this one had to fight for Tiberi. Among those outraged at Tiberi had seemingly been wrongful was William Roth, the senior senator, United States Senator from Delaware, and head of the Senate Subcommittee on Investigations, whose interest in the matter, no doubt, was heightened by the fact that Tiberi was a constituent. Tiberi, Bernard Hopkins, and Bobby Chaz were among the fighters called in to testify in front of the Senate for that investigation. And for those hearings came the Muhammad Ali Boxing Reform Act. That's when that happened. From those hearings after that fight. Authored by Arizona Senator and future presidential candidate John McCain, and signed into law by President Bill Clinton. The Professional Boxer Safety Act was enacted shortly thereafter. Now, the Ali bill is watered down, Tiberi acknowledged, but I feel that a first step was taken to bring reform to a sport badly in need of it. I feel like I've benefited the sport in so many ways and have made a difference. I really believe God put me here to shine a light on what's dark. There's a lot of darkness in the world and in boxing, right? But yeah, if he'd have took that money and everything for the sacrifice, none of this would even happen. Yeah. Yeah, but no, Lights Out ain't overrated at all. Autism boy, no way. Now, I guess this was about like 15 years ago. Tiberi, who owns a successful security system company, did return to boxing as a promoter in his home state of Delaware until they concluded that he was devoting too much time to it to the detriment of his primary source of income. Boxing was a sport I loved and still do, he said. Doing those shows at Dover Downs was a lot of fun. We had some sellout crowds too, but without television, it's a pretty expensive hobby. That's for Lights Out. He went on to have a pretty good career himself, okay? Out of Ann Arbor, Michigan. 4-division world champion, middleweight, super middleweight, cruiserweight, heavyweight, and Lights Out, James Lights Out Toney had a 29-year career, right? 29-year professional career, 92 total fights, 77 wins, 10 losses, 3 draws, 2 no contests, 47 knockouts, and he is a resident of the International Boxing Hall of Fame. Yeah, James Lights Out went on to have a Hall of Fame career, okay? I think that was middleweight. That was his first title right there, IBF middleweight championship. Okay, so now let's take a look at Donald Curry. He was huge in the 80s, and as far as like the lower weight classes, because Mike Tyson was the man at heavyweight then. He was going strong then. But Donald Curry, Sugar Ray Leonard was the face of boxing, and Donald Curry was considered to be a viable replacement for him. But, he didn't live up to the height, to what they thought he was going to be. Let's talk about that. Okay? Donald Curry. The Lone Star Cobra was special, but didn't fulfill his vast potential. No, he didn't. No, he sure didn't. Let's talk about Donald, the Lone Star Cobra from Fort Worth, Texas. That's where Donald was from, Fort Worth, Texas. Here's him and Muhammad Ali. Ali making a face like he get ready to go to war with him. Okay. Excuse me for 1 minute. I gotta go to my backup plan. Okay. That's up for you. Okay. Here we go. The Lone Star Cobra. That's what they called Donald. Oh, man. Man, these commercials come up on you quick, but that's worse than TV. They'll be paying me doing these commercials and stuff. Okay, yeah, the Lone Star Cobra. He was special, but didn't fulfill his vast potential. Aunt McQueen, what's up, Aunt? Aunt says, lights out, baby. Yeah, okay. Salute, Aunt. Okay, Donald Curry now. The Lone Star Cobra. Okay, so when Donald Curry, the Lone Star Cobra, was at his best, which was exceptionally good, he gave no thought of someday being inducted into the International Boxing Hall of Fame because no such place then existed. The International Boxing Hall of Fame officially opened its doors on June 10th, 1989, right? And its first induction class was enshrined exactly 1 year later. Both momentous occasions in the picturesque central New York village of Canastota, predating Curry's 2 world championship reigns. Okay? I don't think he's in there. I don't know. I meant to check on that. I meant to check on that before I started. But Curry is now retired and largely forgotten, except as a wistful figure that stood on the precipice of greatness, and for reasons that make sense only to him, found a way to leave unfulfilled the vast potential that once portended sustained success. On the very night of his career highlight, his 2-round demolition of Milton McCrory in their welterweight unification showdown at the Las Vegas Hilton, December 6, 1985, HBO analyst Larry Merchant spoke for many in predicting the brightest of futures for the WBA and IBF welterweight champion, who in short order would violently snatch McCrory's WBC belt. And that was undisputed at that time because, WBO was there, but it wasn't one of the big ones. The other 3 didn't recognize it as a major title then. So he came in with the WBA and IBF, took McCrory's WBC, so he was undisputed welterweight champion. And Larry Merchant said, Milton McCrory, who was 27-0 with 22 knockouts coming in, is a champion, and champions are hard to beat, Merchant told his HBO viewing audience. And he's unbeaten. And an unbeaten fighter is hard to beat. His hit and run tactics just might neutralize Curry. Now, if you were to give Curry the fight of his life, it wouldn't register on the Richter scale as a major shock. Yet, the bottom line on the betting is this. McCrory is regarded as a good fighter. Curry is regarded as possibly a great fighter. Now, greatness seemed to be more than a mere possibility for Donald Curry. A 24-year-old boxer puncher from Fort Worth, Texas, as he swiftly demolished McCrory, a tall and gangly Kronk Jim stablemate and stylistic approximation of the more celebrated one and only Thomas Hitman Hearns. Okay, a stablemate of the Hitman. Now, the first round wasn't half over when Curry wobbled and hurt McCrory with a ripping left hook that sent him reeling back into the ropes. Now, although McCrory somehow made it to the bell, his prospects of surviving long enough to make a real fight of it were quickly dashed. Curry went after his fellow 147-pound champion as if he were a tiger, pouncing on a slab of raw meat. Another left hook upstairs sent McCrory crashing to the canvas. And although he beat the count, he was like a man on the deck of a ship tossed on a turbulent sea. Seconds later, Curry connected with a crushing overhand right to the jaw that put McCrory flat on his back, his eyes glazed and unfocused. Not that it was necessary, but referee Mills Lane still went ahead with the formality of a 10 count. He could have counted to about 500, and McCrory still would have been prone on the canvas. Yeah, but Mills Lane is a professional, and he still counted. You know, he ain't want no difficulty or nothing. Thomas Hill in the building. What's up, T. Hill? Yeah, we're talking about some fighters from the 80s, early 90s, around that range. Donald Curry and his unfulfilled potential today. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, and everybody, Monday, yeah, we're going to drop the link. Like, we're going to do the fight of the day Monday, and then like 2:30, we're going to drop the link. The show Monday is going to be the Canelo Bud fight. So everybody not doing nothing, if you can, get there early. About 2:30, the link going in, and we're going to just chop this fight up or chop it down, whatever, Monday. Canelo Bud and Monster anyway. So Monday, the link, the show is going to be the panel Monday. That's what I'm trying to say. The entire show Monday is going to be the panel. We're going to talk about the weekend's action. Yeah, and we on Tuesday. We on the way. Okay. Yeah, so he demolished Milton McCrory, became undisputed welterweight champion. Donald Curry did. Now, with this scintillating performance, there were more than a few knowledgeable fight people who were prepared to anoint Curry as the finest pound-for-pound fighter on the planet. He was 26-0, 21 knockouts at that time. Because after Sugar Ray Leonard left, what was winding down, everybody was saying Donald Curry was demanding, you know? Yeah. Now, truth be told, Curry held a similarly exalted opinion of himself. But at the apex of a boxing life that seemed poised to take off like a NASA moon launch, Curry made the most basic and foolish of mistakes. He began imagining all the high prestige, big money fights that soon would be coming to him as his just due, instead of paying serious attention to any other truly dangerous opponents, if less renowned, he might face. Yeah, because he faced. We're going to get to it. That reckoning would not be against Roberto Duran, Sugar Ray Leonard, Aaron Pryor, or Hearns, all of whom Curry had envisioned as stepping stones on his way to ring immortality, not to mention the guaranteed 7-figure paydays he perceived as the most legitimate certification of superstardom. He didn't fight none of them, okay? Because before he could get to him, he got beat. It would be against an undefeated Englishman by way of his native Jamaica, who should not have been taken lightly, but whom Curry mistakenly thought of as a mere speed bump instead of the presumably more imposing hurdles he already had begun mentally preparing to clear. Okay? After summarily disposing of the outclassed Eduardo Rodriguez in 2 rounds in his first post-McCrory title defense, first defense of his undisputed titles, right? He got rid of Eduardo Rodriguez in 2 rounds. So his next fight was against top-ranked Lord Honeyghan. Honeyghan came in 27 over 17 knockouts. and the fight scheduled to take place on September 26, 1986 at Caesars Atlantic City. Now, some observers, mostly those from the United Kingdom, saw Honeygan as a live underdog, right? Now, dismissive Curry figured otherwise. I fought off of motivation, Curry said when contacted for his story, was this story. If I thought that you were a real threat to my career, I'm going to work my butt off to get ready to fight you. That guy, all I knew is that he was named Honey something. I didn't really know who he was. Well, you should have went and found out. Okay. This is still Curry talking. After the Milton McCrory fight, I was looking for something bigger and better. That was my attitude. Yeah, he overlooked Honeygan. He said his guy's name was Honey something. Yeah. Said he was looking for something bigger and better after the McCrory fight, right? So they told me he was ranked number 1 by the WBC, but I didn't really follow the ratings. His name didn't ring any bells with me. My idea was to defend my title against him and move on to that really big fight I wanted. I wasn't mentally ready that night. If I had been, beating that Honey guy would have been no problem. Curry's lack of focus in his preparations for the Honeygan fight was exacerbated by the death of his beloved grandfather. Not only that, but he was embroiled in a managerial dispute with David Gorman, whose contract with Curry was to expire 3 days after the fight with Honeygan. But Curry's choice as his new manager, Akbar Muhammad, wanted Gorman to remain involved as the co-manager. And although Gorman declined to share those duties, he consented to be part of Curry's corner team. Okay? Well, just, be the manager in name and still, be part of the corner team. Not rocket science, right? But anyway, he was embroiled. His grandfather had died. He was embroiled in a dispute with his manager, and he still was he didn't even know who this guy Lloyd Honeygan was. All that was going on coming into this fight. It was an uncomfortable situation all around, and may have contributed to an undertrained, admittedly distracted Curry, needing to lose 11 pounds 3 days before the fight. Although some sports books had paid Curry such a prohibitive favorite that they would not even post a betting line. One that did accepted a $5,000 wager Honeygan made on him himself at 5-1 odds. Okay? Your Honeygan bet 5,000 on himself at 5-1 odds. Now I'm going to smash his face in Honeygan's set of the undisputed welterweight champion, who had shown him so little respect. And by the 5th round, a weak and sluggish Curry was running on empty, and late in round 6, an accidental headbutt over the gash over his left eye. Returning to his corner, he advised his handlers that he was through, a message which was agreed to on medical grounds by 2 ring physicians, whose recommendation to halt the proceedings was accepted by referee Octavio Moran. Yep. Not only beat him, but stopped him. The Honey guy did. That's what Curry called him. The Honey, named Honey something, stopped him. Mr. Honey something stopped him. Yeah, not only beat him, stopped him. Curry was through, all right, but in ways no one could then have imagined. The Lone Star Cobra, a legend in the making, and still only 25 years old, would never be quite the same fighter after that fight with Honeygan. I had just recently beat an easy, the top guy in the division, Milton McCrory. So my thinking was, so who is this guy Honeygan? A reflector, Curry said, 31 plus years after the fight. All right, so he was my mandatory. I should have prepared harder for him, but my feeling was that I'd get my mandatory in, no problem, and then go on to something bigger and better. He was looking for Sugar Ray Leonard, Duran, or Hearns. If they had told me more about him, I know I would have been more ready to do what needed to be done. But, in the end, that responsibility falls on you because you're the one getting in the ring with him. You're the one getting in there. So that falls to you ultimately. I think, right? You're the one getting in the ring with this guy. Looking back, I blame my management for what happened. But it is what it is. I had to move on. And I have. I'm good with it. Well, maybe he's not all that good with the way things eventually played out. For a time, Curry moved on well enough to remind fight fans of what he had been and might again become. On July 8, 1988, he again claimed the world title when he wrested the WBC super welterweight belt from Gianfranco Rossi on Rossi's home turf of San Remo, Italy. Now, Rossi went down 3 times before he quit on his stool after the 9th round. So, he did get another title, okay? Yeah, he did get another title. Come on, things change. Okay, there we go. Bear with me for a second. I'm doing all kinds of stuff. That's what I was trying to do right there. Okay, so he did get another title. The Curry was back on top. But, as it turned out, not for long. After a stay busy 5th round stoppage of Mike Tiberi on January 3rd, 1989 in New Orleans, he journeyed to France to defend his 154-pound belt against Frenchman Rene Jacquot. But in a virtual replay of his Honey Yan disaster, Curry was listless and ineffective in a unanimous decision loss. That fight was named the Ring Magazine's Upset of the Year. The second time Curry was on the wrong end of such a shocker, the first being his dethronement by Honey Yan. So no excuse this time. You had been in a fight where you took a guy lightly, didn't train and everything, and got beat. So now you're going to do it again. And last time he blamed his management. It's really on him this time. Second time this happened to him. This time, there would be no redemption. Reputation restoring comeback. In the 3 Crossroads fights during the remainder of his career, he was knocked out in 10 rounds by IBF middleweight champion Michael Nunn, in 8 rounds by WBC super welterweight champion Terry Norris, and finally in 7 rounds by Emmanuel Linton for the vacant and fringe IBA junior middleweight title. Now, Curry has been on the International Boxing Hall of Fame's ballot for years, but despite a mostly impressive 34-6 record with 25 knockouts, voters have seemingly determined that his prime was too abbreviated to have a plaque hung alongside those who had more staying power. He's not in yet at the elite level. But it can be argued that there are Hall of Famers whose best work never quite approached the periodic masterpieces authored by Donna Curry. But those 2 losses to those 2 guys, Honey Yan and the Frenchman, had to hurt him, because that second one should not have happened. He'd been through that once, didn't train, took a guy lightly, then he turned around and did it again. So that's probably hurt him as far as getting in the hall. Now, at the time he beat McCrory, I believe he was just as good as Hearns and Leonard, said Roy Foreman, George Foreman's younger brother, and a fellow Texan, who believes Curry should receive more credit for however much time he did have as a premier practitioner of the pugilistic arts. I think he was the absolute best that night. But that was McCrory. Now, speaking about the times he stubbed his toe against Honeygad and Jack Quat, and against Mike Mcclellan, to whom he lost twice, Nunn, Norris, and Lamont, and Linton, for that matter, is not how Curry wishes to stroll down memory lane. His natural inclination is to keep revisiting his signature performance when he took apart McCrory as a child, might take apart a set of Lincoln logs. Yeah, he wants to remember that one. But people will remember those two you lost to those lower level fighters that you shouldn't have had no problem with. But yeah, Donald Curry, he didn't reach his full potential that he should have. Those two losses there were major in his career. Let's talk about Gerald McClellan, right? Remember, he went blind after the fight with Nigel Benn, lost like 70-80% of his hearing. Yeah, that was terrible. And leading up to that fight, he said he didn't feel right and didn't want to take the fight. But let's talk about that, because Don King was right in the middle of that. Yes, he was. McClellan had Emanuel Stewart as a trainer, but he wanted to sign with Don King because, back then to make the big money, most fighters, either Don King or the Bob Father. And Don King told him, if I sign you, you got to get rid of Emanuel Stewart, because Emanuel Stewart made sure his fighters were paid right, didn't put him in no dangerous situations and everything. So Don King said, no, Emanuel got to go. And McClellan ended up firing Emanuel. And then he took on a Don King appointed manager, trainer. Don King appointed his next trainer after Emanuel Stewart. But let's talk about Gerald McClellan. Yeah, tragic, just tragic, man. Lost his vision and like 80% of his hearing. That is, I can't even imagine that, man. How do you even communicate with people? Wow. Okay. Gerald McClellan. What was the real story about Gerald McClellan's brain injury? That's what we're going to address. The real story about Gerald McClellan's brain injury. Because it was tragic. That's Gerald right there. I don't know how I didn't have this sitting in there and ready. Man, there we go. It's ready now. There we go. Gerald McClellan. What was the real story about this situation? Let's talk about that now. That was tragic, man. I mean, it's bad enough having one of those disabilities, like lose your sight or your hearing, but lose both of them? Man. Okay. But here, Gerald McClellan. I'm trying to find my starting point. Yeah. The end of everything for Gerald McClellan was the Nigel Benn fight. Okay? Was the Nigel Benn fight. Now, coming into that fight, McClellan was favored 3-1. But in retrospect, the odds should have been much more even. Ben came in 39 wins, 2 losses, 1 draw, 34 knockouts, right? While he had gotten 4 of his 5 decisions in the 6 fights preceding the McClellan fight, all were solid wins. Now, although McClellan knocked Ben out of the ring 35 seconds into the fight, Ben came roaring back in the second round And by the 6th round, McClellan had told his trainer that he wanted to quit. He wasn't feeling right. Now, of course, the trainer denies this. And remember, the trainer was appointed by Don King, right? And the trainer denies McClellan told him this during the fight. But McClellan claimed after the fight, he told his trainer he wanted to quit. He wasn't feeling right. Now, up to that point, it had been a back and forth slugfest, with Ben very clearly ahead on the cards, until McClellan knocked Ben down for a second time in the 8th round. Remember, he had knocked Ben down in the 1st round. He dropped Ben again in the 8th round. In the 9th round, Ben, who had exhausted himself, was missing badly. And one punch was so wild, it caused Ben to fall forward and accidentally headbutt McClellan. Now, given what happened, the headbutt may have been a large part of what left McClellan permanently blind, deaf, memory impaired, and completely disabled in a headbutt. That was a hard headbutt, right? Result of Ben missing a punch and falling forward right into McClellan. Okay? Now, McClellan had never been past the 8th round in his career before that Ben fight. And also, he was evidently exhausted as the fight entered the 10th round. Never been past 8, and he was almost out of gas when he went into the 10th, when this happened, right? At about a minute into the 10th round, Ben dropped McClellan to one knee with a hard right hand. Now, McClellan stood up at the count of 7, and the fight continued after the referee Alfred Asaro checked McClellan and approved him to continue fighting, okay? Now, Showtime commentator Freddie Pacheco, the fight doctor, described the 10th round knockdown of McClellan as the strangest knockdown I've ever seen. Even the fight doctor saw something wrong. He used to be Ali's doctor. He said it's the strangest knockdown I've ever seen. Now, not 10 seconds later, Ben dropped McClellan again to one knee. This time he did not get up. He was counted out at 146 of the 10th round. Now, at the time when he was counted out, the fight was very close. It was tied on Judge Franz Marty's card, and McClellan was up by 1 point on Annette Huang's card, and McClellan was up by 3 points on Juan Guerrera's card. So McClellan was winning the fight by split decision at the point in the 10th round when he collapsed, or when he was counted out. He hadn't collapsed yet when he was counted out. Now, Dr. Freddie Pacheco accused McClellan of quitting on the air. He said that during the telecast that he quit. That was a very sad statement, given what ended up happening to McClellan. You know, one of the commentators, Freddie Pacheco, said he quit. And given what happened, wow, I know he regrets that. Contrary to uninformed claims, Ben was not warned or disciplined for any dirty fighting, nor was there any complaint later about the referee, the respected Alfred Asaro, who refereed 93 fights without a disciplinary action or formal complaint his entire career. Okay? So, now after McClellan was counted out, he managed to walk back to his corner, right? Then he collapsed, flat on his back once he got to his corner. And he told his trainer, he felt like there was water running around inside my head. Then he lost consciousness. Now, ironically, both fighters were taken by ambulance to the Royal London Hospital, where McClellan underwent brain surgery by Dr. John Sutcliffe for a blood clot, while Ben was treated for exhaustion, but was released the following morning. Now, in the ambulance on the way to the hospital, McClellan briefly woke up and asked his trainer who was riding with him, "What happened? I got knocked out, didn't I?" And his trainer replied, "You didn't get knocked out. You went down on one knee and walked back to the corner and quit on me," right? And the trainer said he would regret that statement for the rest of his life. After he said that, told the man he quit on him, right? And he said he regretted that saying that to that man for the rest of his life after what happened, you know. Now, Mcclellan eventually spent 2 weeks in a coma and only left the hospital in August 1995. Now, he's blind, hearing impaired, suffers short-term memory loss, and needs to use a wheelchair. I think I heard he's like 80%. He can hear a little bit, but not much, you know. Yeah. Now, Mcclellan is taken care of by his sisters, primarily Lisa, and has been supported financially by Roy Jones and Matt Farrago through his nonprofit Ring 10. So who was Gerald McClellan anyway? Who was Gerald McClellan, you know, before all this happened to him? Who was this fighter? Okay. Who was my cursor? Where is it at? Oh, there it is. Okay. Who was Gerald McClellan? Now, Gerald Allen McClellan was an American boxer born October 23rd, 1967. He competed from 1988 to 1995. When the incident happened to him. He was a 2-time middleweight world champion, fought out of the Kronk Gym, and held the WBO title from 1991 to 1992, and the WBC from 1993 to 1995. McClellan was forced to retire from boxing after suffering a severe brain injury during his last fight in 1995, a loss to WBC super middleweight champion Nigel Benn. McClellan was considered a great fighter while he competed. He was dubbed a miniature Mike Tyson by Don King. And Mike Tyson in 1994 called McClellan the best fighter in the world. Now, the Ring magazine ranked McClellan number 27 on their list of 100 greatest punchers of all time. Right? In 2007, McClellan was inducted into the World Boxing Hall of Fame. Nigel Benn later told Ring magazine that McClellan was the best fighter he ever faced, saying he had an incredible knockout ratio and he was a prolific puncher. There was a mile between him and anyone else I ever fought. I came out of that fight with a damaged nose, a damaged jaw, and I was urinating blood. I was in bed for 3 days after the McClellan fight. This is Nigel Benn talking. He said I was in bed 3 days after the McClellan fight, and I had a shadow on my brain. That shows you how powerful a champion that man was. Yeah, and Nigel Benn spent the night in the hospital that night too after the fight. Mm-hmm. Yes, he did. Yeah. Yeah, Nigel Benn spent the night at the hospital. Appreciate you, autism boy. 1000%. So, McClellan ended his career with a record of 31 wins, 3 losses, and he had a 94% knockout ratio. Wow. Emmanuel Stewart, who trained McClellan at the beginning of his career, said, Gerald McClellan is the most talented fighter I have worked with. And he had the ultimate chin. We had him sparring Tommy Hearns because they both out of that Kronk Gym. And he was sparring a hitman when he was just 16 years old. Right? Now, Tommy caught him with stiff jabs, giving him a bloody nose, and was speaking into his ear. The next thing I know, Gerald threw off his headgear and was cussing as he charged at Tommy with straight right hands and lefts. Now Tommy is a survivor with an instinct so he threw his best right hand. It was an awesome punch. The most awesome punches are unleashed under pressure. And Gerald McClellan walked straight through it, okay, from the hitman. He is primarily remembered, other than for his terrible injuries, for his beating Roy Jones in the amateurs and knocking out all-time power hitters like John the Beast McGarvey and Julian Jackson. Wow. Those are two heavy hitters. Yeah, Gerald McClellan. And yeah, it was tragic what happened to Gerald. We want to get to Michael Nunn before we end, because he wanted to play in the drug war, ended up doing 15 years in prison. But yeah, today Gerald McClellan is taken care of by his sisters, primarily his sister Lisa, supported by Social Security disability checks, and by Roy Jones and Matt Farrago. Let's take a look at Michael Nunn. Okay, yeah, he's the fourth one for today. Michael, second to none. That's what they called him. Michael, second to none. So how good a boxer was Michael Nunn? How good a boxer was Michael Nunn? Glad y'all asked. Let's talk about it. But remember, Monday, get here early because 2:30. We putting the link in. The show gonna be the panel Monday. We're gonna chop up this Canelo Bud fight, whatever happens. Okay. And Monster MJ too. Can't forget that. That's another huge fight going on this weekend. So yeah, Japan, they're gonna be coming on early in the morning. So take a nap Saturday. Okay? Oh my goodness, I didn't even put the man's name in there. Michael, second to none. Let's take a quick look at him. And what he did to end up in prison for 15 years. So he sold some cocaine to a undercover federal agent. Okay. Man, I cannot get this to come up. What in the world is going on, Michael Nunn? Let me try again. This is crazy. Right there. Michael Nunn. Ain't that his name? Let me check. Was it David Nunn? No, Michael Nunn. Michael, second to none. Okay. Oh, here we go. There we go. Michael, second to none. How good a boxer was he? Glad y'all asked. Let's talk about Michael, second to none. That's him right there. First, who is Michael Nunn? Another poor kid drawn to the sweet science. Michael John Nunn was born on April 14th, 1963 in Davenport, Iowa. Michael was one of 4 kids born to a single mother who did her best. Still, Michael was drawn to trouble from a young age. But he didn't go to prison until after boxing. That's the part I don't understand. He got into boxing. Most fighters get into the boxing and leave that, trouble behind. Now, Michael would later say, I grew up on the streets. I was a street tough. I was always fighting. It was tough for me. I had a mother who did everything to take care of me, lead, teach, and guide me. But growing up in the neighborhood I was hanging out with a lot of street toughs. That's why I was a tough guy, the way I was raised and came up. Now, his older brother, Willie, was worried about Michael always being in trouble, and Willie took him to the Davenport Boxing Club. And when he was 11 years old, and that's where he learned how to box under the guidance of Alvino Pena, right? And Michael Slater set up his start in the sport. When I went to that boxing gym at first, I loved boxing because I was so talented. Now, his amateur career, Michael had a simply amazing amateur career ending in 168 wins and 8 losses. He won the 1982 Iowa Golden Gloves at 147, the 1983 Golden Gloves at 156, the 84 Golden Gloves at 165. He lost the decision to Virgil Hill at the 1984 Olympic trials at 165. And then he defeated Hill by a 5-0 decision in the first box-off in Las Vegas. In the third and deciding fight, Virgil Hill scored a first-round knockdown on his way to a 5-0 decision. Nunn then turned pro after that. Okay, so didn't get on the Olympic team. Yeah, Julian the Hawk Jackson, Chava, that's him. And he had pop, one of the greatest punchers of all time, pound for pound. Now, as a pro, Nunn moved to Los Angeles and joined the Goosen brothers, Dan and his brother trainer brother Joe Goosen, right? Fighting out of the 10 Goose Boxing Gym in Van Nuys, California, he won 30 straight fights out of the gate before facing old rival Frank Tate, who had won because he faced Frank in the amateurs. And Frank had won the vacant IBF middleweight title by then, right? The Hagler had stripped from Hagler prior to his fight with Sugar Ray Leonard. Remember, the IBF stripped Hagler, and Tate had won that. And Nunn won the IBF title from Tate with a 9th round stoppage, right? And he made 5 defenses of that title, including a 1-punch demolition of Sambu Kalambe that earned the ring's first Knockout of the Year award in 1989. First Knockout of the Year award winner was Michael Nunn. Oh, I just learned that this morning. Now, however, beginning a pattern he would follow his entire career, he briefly trained and struggled against former welterweight champion Marlon Starling and Donald Curry in 1990. Now, Nunn believed he was the best fighter in the world, and he yearned for the right stage to show that, and for a commensurate price, right? He said in 2021 to the Ring magazine, "The super fights were always close. I had a contract for $7 million to fight Roberto Duran, but Duran chose not to fight me. That's not on me. I respect him and Sugar Ray Leonard, Thomas Hearns, and Marvin Hagler. I just wanted to test my skills against those legendary fighters. Unfortunately, I never got the chance to do so." And all of those 4 kings was getting up in their careers by when Nunn came around. So that's probably why Duran didn't fight him. You know, prime Duran would have smashed Michael Nunn. But by that time, well, I'm biased. I'd say prime Duran smashed anybody, including Sugar Ray Leonard. But by that time, you know, the 4 kings was getting up there in their careers. So, you know, none of them fought Nunn. But he did, that all ended when Nunn met then unknown James Lights Out Toney on May 10th, 1991. Toney came into this fight against Nunn as a 20-1 underdog. Wow. And Toney was barely losing into the 11th round. Behind at least 4 rounds, Toney could not win without a knockout. But in the last minute of the round, Lights Out caught Nunn with a devastating hook and followed up when Nunn rose. And that was that. The title was gone to Lights Out. 20-1 underdog. Wow. To this day, Nunn says that was his worst moment in boxing. He He said, that was probably the most devastating defeat. I was ahead in the fight, and I got a little careless, and he took advantage of it. And I give him all the props in the world. James was able to do what champions do and capitalize. It was his night. That's right. Lights Out did what champions do. You give him that opening, he capitalized on it. Signed up the great ones right there, man. Nunn then moved to super middleweight, where he again won a title over Victor Cordova for the WBA super middleweight title in September 1992. After 3 defenses, he headed to London to share an event with WBC super middleweight champion Nigel Benn, winning a unification fight in 1994. Now, Nunn faced gatekeeper Steve Little in February 1994 on the same card as Benn. But the gatekeeper took Nunn's title. Yup. That was his last title reign. He tried for a title in the 3rd weight class in 1998 for the vacant WBC light heavyweight title against Graziano Racchigiani in March 1998, but he lost that one, right? He retired from boxing in 2002, 58 wins, 4 losses. Okay, now let's look at this prison thing that he did. It's where is it? Oh man, I went right past it. Nunn's. Bear with me. Nunn's skills. He did go to prison, didn't he? Yeah, Graziano Racchigiani. He retired in 2002. Now, in assessing his career, you can argue that he missed that cut to the Hall of Fame when he lost to the only Hall of Famer that he faced, James Lights Out Toney, right? The only Hall of Famer he faced, he lost to him. And he's still not in the Hall. They hold some stuff out of the ring against you too because oh man, one of them always complaining about that Fort Duran in the 70s. He went to prison for murder, and he's not in the Hall of Fame, and he deserves it. Nunn not in there. He did a prison term, so it's supposed to be what you did in the ring, but they do hold obviously outside of the ring stuff against you. Mm-hmm. I can't think of the guy's name. Esteban de Jesus. Is that him? Okay, Nunn in prison. Let's look at that. Last thing. Nunn in prison. Nunn in prison. Okay. Now, on August 6th, 2002, Nunn was arrested after buying he bought cocaine from an undercover officer. He was arrested after buying 1 kilogram of cocaine from an undercover FBI agent at a Davenport hotel and was later convicted of conspiracy to distribute the drug. Despite all the witnesses against Nunn being cons or ex-cons who received credit for testifying against him, Nunn was convicted of drug trafficking. I mean, why do you even need some witnesses against him? He sold it to an undercover FBI agent. What's the problem, right? He refused to admit guilt and insisted he was only an addict, elevated his sentence far higher than he should have served. Come on, man. An addict buying what did he buy? Well, a kilogram. Yeah, okay. So I don't know. But yeah, he bought it from an FBI agent. So you guilty. Right? But they said he got more time than he should have got. I think he got like 24 years or something. He did 15, right? He got 24-year sentence. He was released on February 6, 2019. That's when he got out. Okay. And he asked about his past. Nunn was blunt. I don't really want to discuss that. There's no doubt about it. There's been changes. It's beautiful being out with my family and friends, just getting back to life. It's better to be out here than be behind the wall. And I want to capitalize on all the great opportunities I have before me. I'm enjoying life. Yeah, you missed a lot in 15 years, man, in prison. Wow. I ain't never been in no prison. Not as a prisoner. You know. Now Nunn, now 60 years old, isn't married, but has 5 children and several grandchildren, and lives quietly in his hometown of Davenport, Iowa. Michael, second to none, had the talent to be a Hall of Famer. As is, he had a great career. Anyone who won titles in 2 weight classes and was in the top 10 in 3 weight classes for 14 straight years is pretty impressive. Yeah, he should be in the Hall. But you know, that prison thing, you know, they hold that kind of, they say they don't, but they do. They hold out of the ring stuff against you. I think it's Esteban de Jesus that fought Duran. He ain't in there neither. He had a great career. And he, great lightweight champion, but he ain't in there. He killed some 17-year-old kid at a stoplight and had life in prison. But he got out because he got AIDS in prison, and he was dying. So they gave him clemency and let him come home with his family. But he only lived a month after they released him. But he did die a free man. So, you know, I guess that stands for something. You know, you didn't die in prison. But yeah, they do hold that against you when you do bad things like that, you know, because Michael Nunn and Esteban de Jesus, I think, belong in the Hall of Fame. But tomorrow we're gonna look at some of the biggest trash talkers in boxing history. Tomorrow, you know, I got like 20 of them, man. Where are they? Let me tell you something. We're not gonna talk about them today, but yeah, I don't know where they at. Somewhere in this book. I need an assistant. What them lawyers call it, pro bono. I need an assistant to work for me pro bono for free. I ain't got no money to pay nobody. I'm trying to save my pennies. But yeah, we got the Canelo Bud Saturday. Monster and MJ. Yeah, Monday's show, don't forget, going to be the panel, going to be the whole show Monday. So pull up early. Help me top this fight up Monday. The entire panel Monday is going to be, the entire show Monday is we're going to do the fight of the day. It take like 15, 20 minutes, and then I'm going to put the link in. And we're going to talk about Bud and Canelo and Bud, Monster and MJ and Monster. Yeah, this weekend. Yeah, it's going to be epic. And I'm wavering. I've been saying Canelo by stopping. Canelo winning all this time. I'm wavering a little bit now, man. It's getting close. Yeah, we're going to talk about some of the biggest trash talkers in boxing history, like Ali, Floyd, Lights Out, James Lights Out Toney. Remember, Lights Out told Nigel Banner and the other, what's the other? Chris Eubank Sr. said, I'll fight both of y'all and your mother on the same night. So Lights Out going to be part of the trash talkers. Tyson, Mike Tyson, Tyson Fury, a bunch of them. Foreman, yeah. So that's what we're going to do tomorrow. We're going to talk about some trash talk, right? And Thursday, we look at a different country every Thursday. It's going to be the Dominican Republic. That should be good, just as good as Cuba. Dominican Republic, Hector Garcia, you know, from down there. Friday, we back to our retired fighters this week. You know, the first week is an active fighter, but Friday is going to be the Matrix, High Tech, Vasyl Lomachenko. He is retired, right? Officially. So we're going to do him Friday, the life and career of Vasyl Lomachenko Friday. You know, go through his life briefly, but mainly looking at his, like a little rundown of his boxing career, you know, his resume. Dig into each fight, you know, some of the things surrounding each fight. Lomachenko, High Tech, the Matrix, all that Friday. Yep. And yeah, don't forget the trash talkers. But I hope everybody enjoyed today. You know, with James Lights Out Toney and Dave Tiberi. the Lone Star Cobra, Donald Curry, how he didn't live up to everything everybody thought he was going to be, because they was pegging him as the next big thing after reaching lofty heights like Sugar Ray Leonard did. They was talking about him in those same kind of words, man. But he lost those 2 fights, to those 2. I wouldn't say lower level contenders, but wasn't supposed to be up to his standards. But he lost both of them, and that hurt him, And then Gerald McClellan, what happened to him? Tragic, man. Can't see. Like 80% of his hearing is gone. Wow. And then Michael Nunn, he wanted to play around in the drug world. He said, but I'm just a user, For a kilogram from a federal agent, he must go use a lot, right? But yeah. And then he said he had ex-cons and only convicts testified against him for leniency. So he got 24 years. He thought he shouldn't have got that much. But you're guilty. You might as well plead guilty. You bought from a federal agent, right? So yeah. But that was, hope everybody enjoyed that. We're going to be back tomorrow with the Trash Talkers, okay? But I appreciate everybody. We're going to get, we didn't get any link time. We're going to make up for it Monday. The whole entire show Monday is going to be the panel. Chop up all this big action we got coming up this weekend. So if everybody can, come help me out, get there like 2:30. Fight of the day, then the panel Monday. Okay? These panels we be having, we still might go till like 6 o'clock. But we're going to see. Chop this big action up this weekend. I can't wait. It's coming, man. I'm wavering. I've been saying Canelo all this time now. I'm wavering, man. Maybe Bud's going to do it. I don't know. I just can't wait to see it, man. A lot of intangibles. What ifs? If this happens, or if that happens, or if that happens, or if this happens. So I just can't wait to see it, man. You doing a breakdown on that one, Ed? Or did I miss it? Man, I would love to see that. Casual's going to break down on Canelo Bud. Wow. Man, because I don't know what to say about this one. But I will say this. It's happening Saturday. I can tell. I don't know who's going to win, who's going to lose, but I know they're going to be in the ring Saturday, getting it on. And then Monster MJ after that. Somebody said Monster MJ start like 12:30, almost right after Bud and Canelo. So, man, I'm going to have to sleep till about 8, 9 o'clock Saturday night so I don't miss it. So y'all take your naps during the day Saturday. But yeah, I appreciate everybody that came through today, as always. Oh, you haven't picked yet, Shower? Yeah, I was saying Canelo, but I'm wavering big time now. I'm wavering big time. I'm almost at 50-50. I'm almost at 50-50 now. I don't know. I looked at him and everything, but I would like to see the Ant McQueen Catherine corner breakdown on it. That might help me out. But we'll see what happens. Or has it been one and I missed it? I don't know. I hope not. I know we're getting one. But I appreciate everybody, man. Thomas Hill, Ant McQueen, Mike Rim, Autism Boy, Kensaw Love 1, Jarrell Hattie, Shower, and Miss Cass. Appreciate y'all 1,000,000%. Join me tomorrow for the Trash Talker show, okay? Because if it's Monday through Friday, 2 p.m., it's the Box Story bringing you all that boxing history. Everybody have a great afternoon. Appreciate y'all.